The tortoise, the hare, and the squirrel, a screen-free tale. It had been years since the great race, the one where, against all odds, a slow and steady tortoise had beaten the famously fast and flashy hare. But if you asked the hare, he'd tell you the story differently. Sure, the tortoise technically won, Hare would say, leaning casually against a tree while polishing his nails. But it was because I let him. I was just pacing myself. I wasn't even trying. In fact, Hare had been saying that for years. At every forest gathering, every berry festival, every river picnic, without fail, Hare found a way to remind everyone he could have won if he really wanted to. The forest animals had heard it so many times, they could practically recite his speech by heart. Even the squirrels, who were usually too busy collecting nuts to pay attention, rolled their eyes when Hare started bragging. Tortoise, on the other hand, said nothing. He just smiled politely whenever Hare launched into his spiel, nodding along, never taking the bait. That is, until one particularly sunny afternoon. The animals were all gathered in the clearing for the annual forest fair. Booths lined the glade, pie-eating contests, sack races, acorn tosses. And of course, right in the middle, Hare had climbed onto a stump, clearing his throat loudly. "Ladies and gentle animals," he declared, "once again, let me remind you of the real story of that famous race." A collective groan rippled through the crowd. Even Owl, who usually napped during the fair, peeked one sleepy eye open. Tortoise quietly munched on a leaf nearby, but then something in him snapped. He finished chewing, straightened up, and walked over to Hare's stump. "Hare," Tortoise said evenly, "I've heard enough." The crowd gasped. Deer dropped their caramel apples. Frogs stopped mid-hop. Tortoise continued, calm as ever. "How about we settle this once and for all? A rematch. You, me, same rules. But—" He paused, looking around at the gathering animals. "This time, anyone else who wants to race can join." There was a stunned silence. Then, from somewhere up in the trees, a shrill, excited voice piped up. "I'll race!" Everyone looked up. There, leaping down from a branch, was Sally the squirrel. Sally was known for two things, being incredibly fast and being incredibly distractible. She never walked anywhere if she could zip or zoom, but she also never finished a sentence without chasing after something shiny. She landed next to Tortoise, grinning from ear to ear. "This sounds fun! Count me in!" Hare opened his mouth to protest, but saw the curious crowd gathering closer. His pride wouldn't let him back down now. "Fine," Hare huffed, crossing his arms. "Tortoise, Squirrel, whoever else wants in, bring it on. This time I'll show everyone who's the fastest." The forest erupted in cheers and chatter. Sally started doing stretches, bouncing in place. Tortoise nodded calmly, as if he hadn't just shaken up the entire forest. The rematch was on, and little did they know this race would be nothing like the last one. The Tortoise, the Hare, and the Reluctant Rematch, Part 2, the race rewind. The day of the big rematch dawned bright and clear. Forest animals from far and wide crowded the clearing. Birds perched on branches, foxes leaned against tree trunks, even old Badger brought a lawn chair to watch. At the starting line stood the three racers. Hare adjusted his headband, stretching dramatically. "This'll be over before lunch," he smirked. Tortoise yawned politely, inching up to the line. And Sally the squirrel? She was spinning in circles, chattering to anyone who would listen. "Okay, I brought snacks. Also, I made a playlist. Do you think we'll see butterflies? Oh, look, a butterfly." The crowd settled. Owl, acting as official starter, raised a feathered wing. "Ready, set, go!" Hare took off like a shot, dust swirling behind him. Sally zipped after him, but not in a straight line. She darted to one side to high-five a chipmunk, then zigzagged across to grab a flower she'd spotted. Tortoise blinked slowly, took one step forward, and then another. Within minutes, Hare had a strong lead. He glanced back, smugly noting the distance between himself and Tortoise. But then, wham! Sally zoomed past him, nearly knocking him over as she shouted, "I forgot to tie my shoes!" Never mind, she wasn't wearing any. Hare stumbled, regained his balance, and picked up speed. Moments later, zip! Sally reappeared, holding a giant pine cone. "Look what I found! Wanna trade snacks?" Hare swerved to avoid her, gritting his teeth. Meanwhile, Tortoise ambled along, humming softly to himself. The forest track twisted and turned. Hare was fast, but Sally's interruptions were constant. At one point, she stopped dead in the path, pulling out a tiny notebook. "I've decided to start a gratitude list," she declared. "Number 1, the breeze. Number 2, shiny rocks. Number 3, oh no, is that a bee?" She took off screaming, running right into Hare's path again. Hare skidded to a halt, fur frazzled. "Could you please focus?" Sally grinned. "Focus, right, look, mushrooms." She darted off to investigate. Further back, Tortoise continued steadily. He nodded to the cheering crowd, past a family of ducks, and even stopped briefly to sip water from a stream before resuming his calm pace. Near the halfway point, Hare tried to regain control. "I've got this," he muttered. "No way I'm losing to those two." But just as he rounded a bend, Sally jumped out from behind a bush wearing a leafy crown. "Ta-da! I'm queen of the forest now. Want to race to the next tree?" Hare groaned audibly, and back on the trail, Tortoise kept plodding forward, one unshaken step at a time. As the sun climbed higher, the crowd buzzed with excitement. "This is better than last time," murmured a raccoon. "Did you see that squirrel? She's chaos," giggled a rabbit. The racers pressed on, unaware that the real challenge was just around the corner. But for now, the race was full of squirrel antics, Hare frustration, and Tortoise calm. And the spectators in the forest couldn't get enough. The tortoise, the hare, and the reluctant rematch. Part 3, Trouble in the Rain. The race had been going on for a while now. The forest animals watching from the sidelines had long since given up trying to guess who would win. Between Hare's bursts of speed, Tortoise's steady pace, and Sally the squirrel's chaotic zigzagging, it was anyone's guess. Up ahead, the sky began to darken. A few fat raindrops splashed onto the forest path. Hare glanced up, scowling. "Ugh, rain? Seriously?" Sally the squirrel spun in a circle, catching a drop on her tongue. "Fun! It's like a free drink." Tortoise blinked up at the sky but kept moving forward at his usual unhurried pace. The rain thickened, falling faster, pelting leaves and pattering against the dirt trail. Mud began to form beneath their feet and paws, but no one thought much of it. Until the wind shifted. A sudden sharp gust rattled the trees, the rain fell harder, heavier, like buckets being dumped from above. The air grew thick, the temperature dropped, and a distant rumble echoed through the woods. Tortoise paused, frowning. He smelled something off. Hare squinted. "That's not just rain." Sally darted up onto a low branch, ears twitching. "What's that sound?" The rumble grew louder, closer, a deep rushing roar. Then, in the distance, through the trees, they saw it. A wall of water, brown and foaming, tearing down the hillside like a giant frothy beast. "Flash flood!" Hare shouted, his voice sharp with panic. The water was coming fast, faster than anyone expected. Trees bent under its force, debris swirling within the torrent. Branches, logs, even whole bushes were being carried along like twigs. The path behind them vanished beneath the rushing water. Sally squeaked and scrambled up the nearest tree, clinging to a high branch. Hare darted left, then right, trying to find higher ground, his usual confidence gone, eyes wide with fear. Tortoise froze in place, water swirling around his legs, the current tugging at him. His shell felt heavier by the second, and the mud beneath him slipped and shifted. "I'm not a water turtle," Tortoise muttered grimly, struggling to keep steady. The water rose fast. Hare spotted a rock jutting out above the waterline and hopped onto it, breathing hard. "Squirrel, get higher!" he shouted, looking up at Sally. But Sally had chosen the worst possible tree. The roots were half submerged already, the base wiggling ominously as the water battered it. Leaves shook violently overhead. "I can't! The branch is too slippery!" she cried, clinging tightly, tail fluffed out with terror. Another rumble, another surge of water. The tree groaned. Tortoise, still struggling against the current, called out, voice low but steady. "Hare, we have to work together. Get to her. I'll steady the base." Hare hesitated, panting, then nodded. With a powerful leap, he bounded from his rock toward Sally's tree, slipping once but catching himself. Tortoise planted himself as firmly as he could against the tree's base, pressing his shell against it, using all his weight to anchor it. Water swirled past, nearly sweeping his legs out from under him. "Hurry!" he called. Up in the branches, Sally's claws slipped again. The tree lurched dangerously. "Don't let go!" Hare shouted, scaling the lower branches, rain pelting his face. "I can't! I'm slipping!" she squeaked. With one final push, Hare reached her, wrapping his paws tightly around hers. "Jump to me, I've got you." Sally hesitated, eyes wide with fear, then nodded. She leapt. Hare caught her, nearly toppling backward, but managed to cling to the trunk. Below, Tortoise strained, legs trembling, mud swirling around him. "Quickly!" he urged. With Sally clutching his back, Hare scrambled down, leaping to a nearby rock just as the tree gave one final groan and toppled into the churning water. The three of them stood there, panting, soaked, hearts racing. The rain eased slightly, though the flood still roared past them. Tortoise's legs wobbled, but he stayed upright, his steady calm slowly returning. Hare looked at him, then at Sally, who was shivering but safe. No one said anything for a long moment. Then Sally burst out, voice shaking, "Thank you both. You saved me." Hare gave a breathless laugh, wiping water from his eyes. Tortoise just nodded quietly. The race was the last thing on anyone's mind now. They had made it through something far bigger, and together they'd survived. The tortoise, the hare, and the reluctant rematch, and part 4, a different finish line. The storm had passed, the sun peeked out timidly from behind scattered clouds, and the swollen river slowly receded, leaving behind soggy leaves and tangled debris. In a quiet clearing, far from the finish line, 3 very muddy, very tired animals lay side by side. Tortoise, shell-streaked with dirt, rested his head on a smooth stone. Sally the squirrel sprawled on her back, tail flopped over her eyes, still catching her breath. Hare sat cross-legged, arms folded behind his head, staring up at the sky. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Sally giggled faintly. "Well, that was the wildest race ever." Tortoise gave a soft grunt. "If you can still call it a race." Hare smirked, shaking his head. "Nope, not anymore." They exchanged glances, quiet, knowing smiles. Whatever bragging rights or finish lines had existed before were now washed away, forgotten like the muddy path behind them. And from that day forward, Hare never once brought up rematches, races, or who was faster ever again. Some things they all realised were more important. Thanks for listening to today's story. We hope you enjoyed it and feel calm and cozy. If you'd like more screen-free, ad-free, wholesome stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out our channel. There are plenty more waiting for you. You can also listen to all of our stories on your favourite podcast apps like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.